and welcome back to Mysterious North Carolina, a podcast exploring historical, natural, and supernatural phenomena in our home state. I'm your host, Nathan.
And this is head researcher, Justin.
And this is local heartthrob, Bennett.
So, Justin, what mystery are we looking into today?
Today, we will be looking at a wild story of a lost people, which comes to us down from Cherokee legend. Although part of the mystery is whether these people come from Cherokee legend or if they come from settlers. So they are known as the Moon-Eyed Men.
The Moon-Eyed Men. All right, so we're going to be delving into some different theories with the Moon-Eyed Men. Justin, would you like to kick us off?
The Moon-Eyed Men are described as a pale albino nocturnal race, which was destroyed by the Cherokee when they arrived into the Appalachian Mountains. Alright, well, there's essentially 5 mysteries involving the Moon-Eyed Men. One is like I mentioned, whether they're really Cherokee in origin or if they're European in origin. The other is if they were real or if they were myth. The other would be whether the Moon-Eyed Men are a people from America, or if they're Europeans, or if they're some more exotic, non-human, perhaps, race of beings. There's also a certain ancient structures which are sometimes attributed to them, and also why they're even called the Moon-Eyed Men. Whether their eyes looked like moons, or if they just hung out at night, or what was up?
All right, so let's lay some groundwork here. So the general idea, as I understand from my research about the Moon-Eyed Men, is that they were this separate race during the time of the Cherokee that were generally albino in appearance and shorter and bearded, and they had apparently eyes that looked like the moon. And this was supposedly in Appalachia, in North Carolina, in the mountains.
Right. Good summary.
Yeah. So let's just get down right to it. The first report of the Moon-Eyed Men comes from 1997. Benjamin Smith Bowden describes them as not being able to see in the daytime and as having like white skin, and he thinks that they might, and he describes them as being an albino race. And so that is one theory, which is somewhat plausible. We do know that there are like some tribes of people where albinism appears more common. There's a tribe in Panama called the Kuna that have higher rates of albinism. So that's one of the more realistic theories, perhaps. At least something that I find more realistic.
So what are some of the more outlandish theories?
All right, well, there is one that the Moon-Eyed Men came from Wales.
The country?
Yes. They did not come from citation.
Oh, I'm so
The
sorry.
sea
They
creature.
didn't come from, they didn't ride on whales.
No. This
Ride whales
This-
deep into the Appalachian wilderness.
yeah, this is not an Atlantean theory. Although,
So what
well, Atlantis, that's not such a bad idea now that I think about it.
We should have an episode on that, on North Carolina's Atlantis.
that sounds
Atlantean
Otherwise known as
connections.
Greensboro.
that's well established. What credence is given to the Moon-Eyed Men coming from Wales?
All right, so
What evidence is there for that?
okay, so basically there's like this legend that Prince Madoc is like this Welsh prince guy. He just sailed to where he sailed from Wales to America in like the 12th century.
Okay.
And the evidence for it is, well, we don't have much evidence.
Interesting.
So
Well,
just this tall tale of Prince Madoc sailing there at that time, and that combined with the idea that the Moonite Men are pale.
well, looking at a bit more of a realistic theory, there is, of course, as many people have spoken about the Madagascarian theory.
Go on.
And this is something that, several professors.
Are you talking about
Have talked about.
Lemuria?
Yeah, exactly. The idea that there's these blue-eyed lemurs that were an invasive species in North Carolina in that time period. And that these blue-eyed lemurs were the cause. According to some professors.
Okay.
So you're saying that the Cherokee fought with blue-eyed lemurs, and they're not around anymore because of that? Well, I mean, Alexander the Great did fight monkeys when he went to India.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented.
There
right?
is evidence that the Moonite Men were smaller or shorter than average, correct?
Yes, in some versions of the legend, they are smaller.
And lemurs are small.
Yeah, but although they're always described as sometimes being like living underground.
Do we have any fossil evidence of lemurs in North America?
No.
That is a flaw in that theory. A strike against it.
It should be noted that they're supposedly bearded, these Moon-Eyed Men.
Sure. So what would that indicate?
Justin?
Well, yeah, so part of that, could it be flying squirrels?
You sound like you're trying almost to convince yourself of that the way you pose that question.
It sounded almost as if you've been
Bennett,
researching flying squirrels.
and I just want to say Bennett's head was nodding vigorously when Justin asked whether there could be flying squirrels. I am skeptical of that. We do have some interesting photo evidence, of statues that have persisted from that time and place. Is that correct, Justin?
Yes.
And how would you describe kind of the resemblance of those statues?
Yes, so for those of us not on our YouTube channel, the best way to describe them is imagine the love child of the Pillsbury Doughboy and E.T. And imagine someone just carved two of these in stone.
That's a thought image I'm wanting to take to bed.
Pillsbury Doughboy and E.T.
Yeah, that gives you an idea of what they look like.
Yeah.
They're in a museum out near Murphy, I believe.
That is intriguing.
So that is a one bit of more solid like archaeological evidence we have.
That is dated to.
We don't know.
Okay.
No one's actually done it. I mean, like,
inconclusive dating. I'm just gonna throw this out there. Albino gnomes.
Yeah.
well,
Albino gnomes. Moon-eyed men. Albino gnomes.
gnomes live
Reaction.
underground.
There's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So it
the
could-
beards, the stature, the complexion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's convincing. The only thing though is the time period, right, with the Cherokee.
The only thing. What about the fossil record or the fact that
I don't think gnomes have
gnomes?
fossils.
Okay.
Why wouldn't they have fossils?
Well,
Well,
Are you saying this isn't a
like garden gnomes.
this isn't a purely natural phenomenon?
We're talking about garden gnomes, right? Like the pottery.
We're not talking about actual statues.
so is there any evidence supporting albino gnomes as being the Moon-eyed men?
I don't believe
Well, I mean, the statue doesn't look like albino gnomes.
All right, that's
Look-
enough for me. That's enough for me. Well, let's move on There was another kind of theory that we were reading about in researching this episode. Bennett, could you talk about that briefly?
You know, it's actually a bit farther out there than you would imagine. But this is a theory that's kind of been floating around the internet. And, you know, supposedly, and, you know, I don't know this firsthand, but supposedly
No.
there are rumblings that some historians suggest that J.R.R. Tolkien, the creator of Lord of the Rings, who had this orc type,
The archetype, the orcs as the villainous army of former elves. Go on.
So some historians are suggesting that J.R.R. Tolkien was accessing ancestral blood memories. So some historians are suggesting that J.R.R. Tolkien, the creator of the Lord of the Rings, was accessing ancestral blood memories when describing the Pale Orcs. And that is to say that the Moon-Eyed Men interacting with J.R.R. Tolkien's ancestors created these memories that were passed down through generations and ultimately served as the inspiration for the Pale Orcs in the Lord of the Rings.
That is a really interesting... Wow. Well, that is a really interesting theory. Justin, is there any literature that we found on this idea of ancestral blood memory?
Well, I do not know what historians Bennett has been reading that have alleged that Tolkien did this.
Yeah, I'm also curious about that. But is there any
Yes.
literature, any?
Yes, there are psychologists who support there being genetic memory.
Okay, can you go into that a little bit?
Well, it's like the idea that some memories can be passed on through generations.
Right.
The thing is, Tolkien was English,
Right,
and the Moon-Eyed Men were in America.
right.
So there's no way Tolkien could have had an ancestral blood memory of the Moon-Eyed Men.
What nation colonized America again?
Okay, let me be clear about like when this Moon-Eyed Men thing happened. It was...
Right, so J.R.R. Tolkien would not be a direct descendant of the Cherokee. However, I guess one could argue that this kind of ancestral memory goes back even deeper and across different cultures in, thousands and thousands of years past.
Well,
That's an argument one would have to make to conclude that J.R.R. Tolkien was somehow influenced by this ancestral blood memory. Is that right, Justin?
Yeah, I would just jump in and say I think it's really fascinating that some of the leading historians are claiming this because, of course, on the face of it, it sounds a bit out there, right? It sounds a bit wild. Justin?
So when you say leading historians, could we name names?
I mean, you've done research as well. Would you like to?
I have not read these leading historians, but I'll take your word for it. Justin?
I mean, it's not my word; it's their word. Well,
It's their word, right? That's right. All right. Justin?
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below in order to help support the channel.